Think about a company that was so dominant, it practically defined its industry. For generations, when you thought photography, you thought Kodak. They were
Hmm.
just the undisputed king.
Absolutely.
And yet this seemingly invincible giant not only faltered, but ultimately faced bankruptcy?
Yeah, and what's really striking about Kodak's story isn't that they were caught off guard by some totally new tech invented by a competitor.
Yeah.
Actually, the very innovation that kind of paved the way for their decline, the digital camera, it came from within their own walls.
Exactly. Which is just wild. And that's precisely what we're diving into today. We're going to take a deep look at how Kodak, the company that invented the first digital camera, managed to struggle so profoundly in the digital age. I mean, eventually facing bankruptcy.
hmm And our exploration today, it's based on insights from an article titled Kodak's Digital Camera Dilemma, The Invention That Killed Their Business. It's by Sneha Mali, published and updated February 3rd, 2025, by Cognitive Market Research.
Okay. Now, for you listening in, someone who values getting informed quickly and thoroughly, our mission today is to really unpack the core factors, that led to Kodak's downfall. We want to pull out some valuable lessons about navigating these big technological shifts, which seem to be happening faster and faster.
Right.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. How did this whole dilemma even kick off for Kodak?
Well, it began with a truly groundbreaking invention, actually. Back in 1975, a Kodak engineer, Steven Sasson, he created the world's first digital camera.
Wow, 75.
Yeah. And this wasn't some external disruption, it was a product of Kodak's own R&D efforts. This first camera, it used a CCD image sensor. So think of it like this. Instead of capturing light on, chemical film,
Right, the old way.
this sensor converted light into electrical signals. Data, essentially.
Okay.
Which, back then was a totally revolutionary way to think about capturing images.
That's just mind-blowing when you think about it. They literally had the future in their hands.
They did.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting, though. Kodak's leadership, they absolutely recognized the significance of this thing. They weren't clueless, but they were also deeply, deeply concerned about what it would mean for their existing, massively profitable film business.
And, I mean, their concerns were valid, at least in the short-term perspective. You got to understand where their money came from.
Right.
The vast majority of Kodak's income, tied to selling photographic film, the cameras that use the film, and all the, printing supplies, the paper, the chemicals.
A whole ecosystem.
Exactly.
Right.
Digital cameras posed a direct, immediate threat to that whole setup. No film needed, no traditional processing. It just bypassed their core revenue streams entirely.
So you've got this potentially revolutionary tech that could change everything, but it directly cuts into your current cash cow. That's a seriously tough spot.
Oh, absolutely.
And as the article points out, Kodak basically chose to, well, put the brakes on the commercial development of digital cameras, all to protect that core film business. It sounds like a real reluctance to disrupt something that was working so well, even if maybe they suspected it wouldn't work forever.
Precisely. It really highlights a fundamental challenge, that a lot of established, successful companies face. People call it the innovator's dilemma.
Right.
This difficulty embracing disruptive stuff that might cannibalize your existing profitable businesses.
Yeah.
There's just this natural pull to protect what's working now.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, now let's zoom out a bit. Look at the bigger picture. What was Kodak's overall business strategy at the time, like late 20th century, and how did that broader strategy play into this whole situation?
Well, the strategy was very much centered on maximizing profits from that traditional film business. They were operating under the assumption, which, turned out to be wrong, that consumers would just keep relying on film-based photography for the foreseeable future.
Just keep buying film.
Yeah. So this led to prioritizing like incremental improvements to their film products, making the film sharper, the colors maybe a bit more vibrant.
Little tweaks?
Little tweaks, exactly. Rather than really investing aggressively and figuring out how to commercialize and, dominate the emerging digital space.
So they were busy polishing the brass on the Titanic, sort of while the iceberg was looming, focused on refining film while this whole digital revolution was gathering steam.
That's a good analogy, yeah.
It sounds like a classic case of focusing too much on the present, maybe, while a future was kind of sneaking up on them. So what happened then as the digital wave really started picking up speed in the 90s?
Well, in the 1990s, as competitors like Sony, Canon started making real strides in the digital camera market, Kodak's response, according to this article, was, well, slow and kind of scattered. They did launch their first consumer digital camera in 1995, which, on the surface might suggest they were in the game.
Right, you'd think, okay, 95, they're on it. But the article indicates it wasn't enough. Not enough to really make a dent.
Exactly. They didn't really market it effectively. They failed to establish themselves as, like, the brand in this new digital imaging world. Their mindset, their big financial investments, they were still so heavily tied to film.
Still thinking film first.
Yeah. They missed a really critical window, an opportunity to be the true pioneers in this rapidly growing digital market. It's almost like they were, testing the waters with one foot, but keeping the other firmly planted on the shore of their existing business, scared to jump in.
Right, like dipping a toe in but never actually committing to the swim. And then by the early 2000s, when they finally did start to take digital more seriously, try to catch up, the article suggests it was just too late.
That's the crucial point. By the time Kodak really started to embrace digital in a big way, their competitors had already grabbed significant market share. They'd built strong brand recognition in the digital space, and consumer habits. They'd firmly shifted. So Kodak's late entry meant they were playing catch-up, but from way behind, trying to win back consumers who'd already found other options they liked.
And we know how the story ultimately ends, sadly. The article directly links this failure to adapt to the consequences. Falling revenues, huge layoffs as that film business just cratered, and ultimately bankruptcy. It's just such a stark illustration of what happens when a company, even a dominant one, can't shift gears quickly enough.
Absolutely. It really underscores the importance of not just inventing new tech, but also being willing to fully commit to it, to strategically pursue those innovations, even if they do threaten your existing revenue streams. You have to be prepared, really, to disrupt yourself before someone else does.
Okay, now let's flip the coin. What about us, the consumers? What role did our behavior play in Kodak's decline? Our preferences shifted pretty dramatically, didn't they?
Oh, massively. The late 90s, early 2000s saw this incredibly rapid, widespread adoption of digital tech by consumers. Digital cameras just got cheaper, easier to get, and they offered this amazing convenience, right? Capturing, storing, instantly sharing images digitally.
That convenience factor was absolutely huge. I remember it. No more buying rolls of film, carefully counting your shots.
Yeah.
Taking them to get developed, waiting days.
Yeah.
Digital just streamline the whole thing. Point, click, see it right away.
Exactly. And this fundamental shift in consumer preference, that really marked the beginning of the end for traditional film photography and, all those processing steps. People just didn't need or want to go through that older, more cumbersome process anymore.
And it sounds like Kodak really underestimated just how fast and how completely this shift would happen. They didn't see how quickly we'd all embrace digital.
Yeah, the article suggests that Kodak's leadership initially thought digital cameras would kind of remain a niche product, something mostly for pros or maybe tech enthusiasts, the early adopters.
Yeah.
They failed to anticipate the huge appeal to just everyday consumers who really valued that affordability, that accessibility, and that instant gratification digital offered.
And then, just to complicate things even more, along came smartphones with built-in cameras, which further squeezed the market for any standalone camera, digital or film.
That's right. Suddenly, a huge chunk of the population had a perfectly decent camera right in their pocket.
Good enough, yeah.
Good enough for most things. This just accelerated the decline of Kodak's traditional business, and it even put pressure on the broader digital camera market itself. And despite being an early player, Kodak really struggled to keep pace with these changing consumer preferences and just the sheer speed of technological advancements in digital imaging.
Yeah, the article even mentions that Kodak's digital cameras were often seen as being, well, overpriced and maybe lacking the innovative features that competitors were rolling out. That's a tough spot, not hitting the mark on price or features.
Yeah, it created a kind of perfect storm, really. It led to that erosion of their market position, a decline in brand loyalty. Consumers just found better, more appealing options elsewhere that suited their needs and their budgets better.
So if Kodak was kind of stumbling and misreading the market, who was getting it right? Who are these competitors that managed to grab that crucial edge in the digital era?
The article specifically calls out Sony, Canon, and Nikon as key competitors who really successfully navigated this transition. Their success, it seems, came from a much more forward-thinking, proactive approach. They invested heavily in R&D for digital tech, in actually marketing their digital products effectively, and in just a continuous cycle of product innovation, always adding new features, improving quality.
So they saw the writing on the wall much earlier, it sounds like. They recognized the huge potential of digital imaging and moved fast and decisively to establish themselves as leaders in this new space.
Precisely. They offered high-quality digital cameras with increasingly sophisticated, desirable features. And they did it at competitive prices that appealed to a really broad range of consumers, from serious photography buffs to just casual point-and-shoot users.
And the article gives some specific examples of how they leveraged their strengths, right? Like Sony using their electronics background.
Yes, exactly. Sony effectively used their existing strengths in consumer electronics. They made digital cameras that integrated really smoothly with other devices, computers, printers offering a more connected, user-friendly experience overall. That ability to create a whole ecosystem gave them a big advantage.
Right, makes sense. And Canon and Nikon, they were huge in film cameras too. How did they manage to adapt and thrive when Kodak didn't?
Well, they also recognized the fundamental shift happening.
Mm-hmm.
And they strategically catered to both their existing base of pro photographers and the fast-growing market of casual users. They offered really diverse product ranges, different price points, different capabilities, making sure they had something compelling for pretty much every segment of the market.
It just sounds like a much more comprehensive, aggressive approach compared to Kodak's more hesitant, fragmented strategy.
Exactly. And they backed up their products with strong distribution networks, big marketing campaigns to reach people globally. Now, if you contrast that with Kodak, you see that reluctance to fully commit to digital and what the article describes as a more fragmented, less decisive approach to product development.
So while Sony, Canon, Nikon were basically going all in on digital, Kodak was still trying to juggle, their legacy film business with their sort of hesitant digital efforts, maybe hoping film would somehow stick around longer.
That seems to be the crux of it, yeah.
Yeah.
And the direct result, Kodak's digital cameras often lagged behind the competition
Mm-hmm.
in image quality and innovative features, just an overall appeal to consumers.
Mm-hmm.
And this just further eroded their market share and, ultimately sealed their fate.
Wow. It's a really clear and, yeah, somewhat cautionary tale of how even a giant, seemingly invincible company can be outmaneuvered and fail if it's unwilling or unable to fully embrace the future. So, bringing it all together for our listeners, what are the big takeaways here? What crucial lessons can businesses and maybe even us as individuals navigating constant change learn from Kodak's story?
Well, Kodak's journey, as the article really powerfully illustrates, serves as a stark reminder of several fundamental business principles. First, there's the very real danger of clinging too tightly to legacy products, old business models, when disruptive innovation is happening all around you.
Right.
Companies need to cultivate a willingness to disrupt their own markets, even if it feels risky or uncomfortable short-term. Because as we saw, if you don't do it, someone else probably will.
It's that old eat your own lunch idea. If you're not willing to potentially cannibalize your existing success with something new and maybe better, a competitor will gladly do it for you.
Precisely. The second critical lesson is the absolute necessity of having a long-term strategic vision. One that's not just aware of market trends and tech advancements, but actively aligned with them. Kodak's main focus on short-term profit from film essentially blinded them to the huge long-term opportunities digital presented.
Yeah.
You need a balance between hitting today's numbers and making strategic investments in future growth and innovation. You got to look beyond the immediate horizon.
It's about having that foresight, seeing where the market is actually heading, even if today looks okay, and being willing to make tough calls to get there. Okay, and the third key lesson from Kodak's fall.
It's the fundamental importance of truly understanding your customers, their evolving needs, their preferences. Kodak just significantly underestimated how quickly and dramatically consumer behavior would shift towards the convenience and affordability of digital.
Yeah.
Companies have to actively engage with customers, use their feedback, use data to inform strategy, and make sure their products and services stay relevant, stay aligned with what people actually want. You just can't assume what worked yesterday will work tomorrow.
So, to boil down the core mistakes, failure to fully embrace innovation, a lack of a clear long-term vision that prioritized the future, and a big misread of their customers and how needs were changing. That's a pretty clear recipe for trouble in almost any industry.
Absolutely. And as Kodak's story shows so vividly, The ultimate consequence of these failures can be a complete loss of relevance in a fast-moving market and, well, business failure.
The article even includes a pretty sobering statistic, what they call a fast fact, that really drives this home.
Yeah, it mentions a 2022 study found that a staggering 78%, nearly 4 out of 5 companies that fail to adapt effectively to technological disruptions, experience significant drops in market share and profitability within just 5 years.
Wow, 5 years. That's fast.
It is. And Kodak's trajectory is a very real, very high-profile example of that statistic in action.
It really underscores the absolutely critical role that continuous innovation and a proactive approach to adaptability play for any business hoping for long-term success. You just cannot afford to stand still in today's market.
Yeah. Exactly. The market, technological progress.
Yeah.
They don't wait for anyone to catch up.
Okay, so to bring our deep dive to a close, let's just quickly recap the core of Kodak's story. The company that actually invented the digital camera ironically faced its own downfall, mainly because, well, they were afraid of disrupting their super profitable film business.
Right.
This led to a slow, kind of fragmented response to the digital revolution, a big underestimation of how fast consumer behavior was changing, and ultimately being outplayed by more agile, forward-thinking competitors like Sony, Canon, and Nikon.
And for you, the listener, as you navigate your own professional world or just watch what's happening around you, maybe consider how these lessons from Kodak might apply to different industries today. What deeply ingrained assumptions might be currently holding back progress or preventing necessary adaptation in other fields?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? Something to take away. In today's super fast-paced tech landscape, what seemingly untouchable industries or dominant business models might be the Kodak of tomorrow, vulnerable to some unexpected disruption, and what early warning signs might hint that a major shift is coming. It really makes you think about the importance of not just reacting to change when it hits you, but proactively embracing it, maybe even driving it yourself.